Here's the truth. Most Americans don't realize how fragile their financial lives are until a systemic shock slaps them in the face. And the silver market right now is one of the clearest warnings that the general public refuses to see. Picture waking up, scrolling through your phone, and seeing silver hovering around $25 an ounce, while analysts casually talk about shortages, delivery delays, and the invisible strain building in physical silver markets that almost no mainstream outlet bothers to explain in simple, raw terms. And here's the catch. Silver is not just a commodity. It's a critical hedge, a tangible store of value. And yet millions are blind to the mechanics behind its price movements, the leverage, the paper claims versus physical delivery, and the stress accumulating quietly in vaults around the country, while the average American continues living paycheck to paycheck, juggling $200 left over after rent, a $400 car payment, $2,500 in credit card debt, $30,000 in student loans, and thinking somehow these numbers don't connect to systemic risks in the commodities they barely understand. Every dollar spent without awareness is a decision that compounds over years, and the choices ignored today often explode in consequence tomorrow. Imagine what happens when contracts that promise physical silver can't deliver because the vaults don't match the paper claims. When that $25 ounce you thought was cheap suddenly spikes to $32, $35, or even $40 because liquidity is tight, and the first wave of informed investors has already positioned themselves to profit while the majority scramble in panic. Here's a psychological truth most Americans don't want to face. The comfort of ignorance is temporary, but the cost of inaction compounds silently eroding purchasing power, leaving most people exposed to shocks they cannot anticipate. Consider your own habits. How often have you postponed research, ignored warnings, or assumed, "I'll wait until tomorrow," while the compounding cost of delay quietly stacks against you? Now layer in real-world context. Industrial demand for silver is climbing steadily. Paper products and ETFs are issuing claims far beyond the actual physical supply. Mining production grows at a snail's pace, and global supply chains are strained by geopolitical tensions, all factors historically associated with sudden violent spikes in silver pricing. Most Americans don't see the imbalance, don't understand that futures contracts are highly leveraged, that delivery delays are real, that when these imbalances materialize, panic buying is not theoretical, it's inevitable. And here's where you personally get trapped. Waiting for mainstream headlines or social media buzz to alert you to danger means you're always a step behind. The window for strategic positioning is closing quietly while you scroll, sip coffee, and assume it won't affect me. Think about that visually. Someone sitting at home watching silver move from $25 to $32 in a week, feeling anxiety, wishing they had acted months ago. The missed opportunity isn't just dollars left on the table. It's compounded years of inaction, procrastination, and comfort seeking. Here's a harsh reality the bullion dealers know, but few tell the public. Paper silver trades in the billions, sometimes trillions, but physical silver often falls short. There's more promises than metal, and when investors wake up to this, the market reacts violently. Premiums spike, liquidity evaporates, and average Americans are forced to buy at the worst possible moment. Now pause and reflect on your own exposure. How much of your financial life is still tied to fiat, paper assets, minimal tangible reserves, each Starbucks online impulse purchase, and deferred research contributing to a widening gap between where you are and where you need to be? Here's a pattern interrupt to really wake you up. This isn't just a market story. This is your life, your purchasing power, your financial freedom. Every ignored signal now becomes a lesson learned at your expense later. The psychological trap is brutal. Humans ignore invisible risk until it becomes painfully visible, and by the time panic sets in, decisions are made emotionally, often at peak disadvantage. Now contrast this with someone who internalized the risk months ago, quietly secured tangible silver, understood the delivery chain, and mentally rehearsed systemic shocks. That person doesn't panic, they act deliberately with psychological advantage, control, and composure. The difference isn't luck, it's awareness, discipline, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths others avoid. Here's another harsh truth. Industrial demand isn't slowing. Global supply chains are fragile, mining output is limited, leverage is extreme, geopolitical tensions rise unpredictably. And when all these intersect, silver can move violently in days, sometimes hours, not months. Most Americans will be caught off guard thinking, "I'll buy later." And by the time they act, prices are already punishing. Now picture the psychological reality of missing this window. Anxiety, regret, self-blame, watching tangible assets you could have acquired quietly appreciate in value while you sit on paper claims or fiat, helpless, reactive, and late to the game. The guilt isn't just financial, it's deeply personal, tied to years of deferred responsibility, habitually ignoring signals, living distractedly, and assuming the system will absorb mistakes. The irony is brutal. The same people who criticize market volatility are the ones most exposed to it because of behavioral inertia, delayed action, and reliance on systems they don't understand. Now visualize the counterexample, the person who acts with discipline. They accumulate tangible silver slowly, understand settlement risks, watch delivery pipelines, maintain composure while the herd panics. They feel pride, not arrogance. In preparation, their confidence compounds, their financial psychology strengthens, and their awareness becomes a structural advantage. The lesson is simple but rarely internalized. Markets are not just numbers, they are reflections of systemic realities, leverage, psychology, and human behavior. And silver right now is a mirror showing the fragility most Americans ignore until it hits home. Pause and ask yourself, how much of your financial life is still reactive? How many years have you let slip without strategic action? How often have you waited for external validation before taking control? Now consider delivery. Billions in paper contracts, hundreds of millions in physical metal. The gap growing quietly, the risk mounting, and when it reaches a tipping point, it won't wait. The panic won't be gradual, and the consequences for the unprepared will be immediate. The cliffhanger is here. The next silver disruption is closer than most imagine, and the cost of inaction will hit harder than any headline. In Part 2, we'll break down exactly how to position yourself mentally and materially, how to shift from reactive to intentional, how to identify hidden systemic traps, and how to turn awareness into control before the market forces your hand, because what happens next will define whether you survive, thrive, or get left behind. And the first step is facing the uncomfortable reality that most Americans are blind to a crisis quietly forming right under